The galaxy had always been a place of constant motion. Wars, trade, politics, life never stopped. But then the silence came. For years, humanity had been at the heart of galactic affairs. Their ships filled the stars, their colonies spread across hundreds of worlds, and their influence was everywhere. Yet, without warning, they vanished. Not physically, no. Earth was still there, still spinning in its orbit, but humanity simply stopped caring. It began with whispers, subtle at first, heard on the fringes of the galaxy. Scientists from the distant planet of Havlon Prime reported strange signals. Not a single distress call had been sent from Earth, nor had any of their colonies reached out. No messages, no communication, nothing. At first, other alien races thought it was just a fluke. Maybe a few planets had gone dark. After all, humans were unpredictable. They were always doing something strange. But as time passed, it became clear something was seriously wrong. Velcor, a seasoned alien diplomat from the Typhor system, stared at his communication console with a deep frown. For centuries, he had worked with humanity, learning from their patterns, observing their behavior. But this was unlike anything he had ever seen. What in the stars is happening? Velcor muttered to himself. The silence had been too long now, and it was starting to feel as though it would never end. There had been no word from Terran High Command, no updates, no diplomatic meetings. Humanity had simply stopped talking. The alien diplomat wasn't alone in his concern. Across the galaxy, others shared his growing unease. Leaders, military commanders, and even the once invincible mercenaries who had worked for humanity, all were left in the dark. But there was something else, something that made this silence more terrifying than anything else. It wasn't just the lack of communication, it was the absence of fear. Normally, when a species like humanity went quiet, others would rejoice or fear some new technological weapon or war coming their way. But now, there was no movement, no announcement, just a strange, calm quiet. It was as if humanity had disappeared entirely from the galaxy's pulse. They had chosen to become distant observers rather than players. Velcor was among the first to understand what this could mean. He paced back and forth in his observation room, his antennae twitching in thought. Humans were never silent. They were always engaged in some form of conflict, diplomacy, or innovation. Even when they seemed to have lost interest, they were always ready to fight for something. So why had they gone quiet? It didn't make sense. Far across the stars, on Earth, things were different. In a room deep underground, away from the sight of the public, a small group of human leaders had gathered in secret. They were the ones who made decisions when the galaxy was looking, and the ones who pulled the strings when no one was watching. But now, they stood in silence themselves. The situation had been growing for months. People had expected it. It was inevitable. But even now, as they watched the other species panic, they remained calm. For the first time in history, humanity had chosen to retreat. Should we say something? One of the human leaders asked, his voice breaking the quiet tension that had gripped the room. Another leader, General Raylan Cole, shook his head slowly. No. Let them wonder. His voice was firm, unwavering. Let the galaxy shake in fear. Let them feel the void that we leave behind. The others nodded, though there was some hesitation in their eyes. It wasn't like humanity to be this quiet. It was almost as if they had turned off the universe itself. Back in the outer reaches of the galaxy, Velcor received a strange message. It was a simple transmission, but it wasn't from a normal source. This one was different. It wasn't a fleet, a ship, or even a diplomatic envoy. It was a broadcast, coming directly from Earth. As the alien diplomat activated the message, it flickered into life. He leaned forward, his heart racing in his chest. A single sentence flashed across the screen in bright, bold letters. "We are no longer interested in the galaxy's affairs. We have seen enough." Velcor froze. The message was chilling in its simplicity. The humans, The ones who had always been the galaxy's most active and dangerous players had suddenly declared their disinterest. They had turned their backs on everything. No warnings, no explanations, just a quiet statement of indifference. The galaxy was now alone, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. As Velcor stared at the message, he couldn't shake the feeling that something far darker was unfolding. He had seen humanity in all its forms: ruthless conquerors, peaceful diplomats, and brilliant innovators. But now, they were like ghosts, standing apart from the universe they once ruled. And the silence continued. The galaxy's heart had stopped beating, and in its place, only fear and confusion remained. The question that lingered in every mind across the stars was simple: what would happen if humanity decided to stop caring for good? The answer, though, was not so easy. The silence was no longer just a whisper. It was beginning to spread, to seep into every corner of the galaxy like a creeping fog. And with it came the first sign, something no one could ignore. On the planet Galfor, an alien race known as the Valzoth had been watching humanity for years, calculating their every move. They had heard the rumors. They had seen the reports. Humanity, once the galaxy's fiercest warriors, had stopped fighting. But even they couldn't have predicted what was coming. The Valzoth were known for their brutality. In their home system, they had conquered and enslaved dozens of worlds. Their ships were massive, their weapons were deadly, and their armies were relentless. But now, with humanity silent, they saw an opportunity to expand, to take control of more star systems without interference. They set their sights on Alpha Terra, a human colony on the edge of known space. The colony was small, a simple mining outpost, but it was still a human settlement. And the Valzoth saw it as an easy target. Their fleet descended on Alpha Terra, 100 warships cutting through the void with terrifying speed. The local defense force, made up of a handful of human soldiers, was no match for them. Or so the Valzoth thought. The moment the first Valzoth ship entered the planet's atmosphere, they were met with an unexpected force. It wasn't a barrage of energy weapons or fleets of human warships. It was ground-based defense that no one had ever seen before. The humans on Alpha Terra had been silent for months, and now they made their presence felt. Hidden deep beneath the planet's surface were ancient human tactical systems, buried and forgotten. These systems had been designed for one purpose: to protect humanity when no help was coming. And now, they had been activated. A single signal, one that had been dormant for years, was sent to the colony's defense network. Immediately, the turrets came to life, firing powerful pulses of energy that tore through the Valzoth warships. Ships that were once invulnerable to most defenses were suddenly crippled, crashing down to the surface in flames. The Valzoth commanders were stunned. This was impossible. The humans couldn't have prepared for this. They hadn't even made contact in months. So how were they fighting back so effectively? The alien fleet tried to regroup, calling in reinforcements. But the humans were already one step ahead. Raylan Cole, a veteran of humanity's most dangerous conflicts, stood at the front of the defenses. He watched as the Valzoth forces scattered. "Don't let them recover," Raylan ordered, his voice steady, filled with the calm that came from knowing that humanity's edge was something no one could predict. "Push them back. Now." The battle was over in hours, but the message was clear. Humanity, despite their silence, was not to be underestimated. And they were still prepared to defend themselves and their colonies with everything they had. Meanwhile, far from the chaos of Alpha Terra, the leaders of the galaxy had begun to feel the tremor. News of the battle spread like wildfire, and suddenly, the galactic community was forced to reckon with what had just happened. The Valzoth were notorious conquerors, but they had been driven away by a few hundred humans on a backwater planet. Velcor sat in his council room, his face grim. He watched the news feeds coming from Alpha Terra, the image of a destroyed Valzoth flagship flickering on the screen. This wasn't just a victory. It was a message. The human silence had not been weakness. It had been strategy. Impossible. Velquar whispered to himself, his voice filled with a mix of awe and fear. They've been planning this. They've been waiting. The news coming in made the alien diplomat uneasy. No one knew what this new human force was capable of, but it was clear that the old rules no longer applied. Humanity had stepped into a new phase of existence, and the rest of the galaxy would have to decide what part they would play in the coming chaos. But even more unsettling was the absence of humanity's fleets. No grand armies had arrived to finish off the Valzov. No Terran warships. The humans didn't need them. Instead, they had used a strategy no one expected, the element of surprise. No alien race could have foreseen that humanity's real weapon wasn't just their military. It was their ability to plan for the impossible. On Alpha Terra, Raylan stood in the middle of the now quiet battlefield, staring at the wreckage of the Valzov warships. There was a strange peace in the air, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. It was clear that the battle had been won, but there was something deeper at play now. "Do you think they'll come back?" one of his soldiers asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Raylan didn't answer at first. He simply looked out at the horizon, where the last of the Valzov ships had fallen. "They might," he said quietly, "but they'll be different next time." He paused, his gaze cold. "Next time, we won't be waiting." And with that, the first sign of humanity's true power was seen across the galaxy. The Valzov had failed, but they wouldn't be the last, and every other species now had a question on their minds. What would happen when humanity finally chose to act? The first sign was just the beginning. As news of the Valzov defeat spread throughout the galaxy, a wave of unease rippled across the stars. Something had shifted. The galaxy's power structures, once so familiar, were now unstable, uncertain of what humanity would do next. But humanity was silent, utterly, eerily silent. No one knew where Earth's leaders were. No ships arrived. No emissaries came forward to explain the shocking victory on Alpha Terra. The Valzov were pushed back, but humanity was still not speaking. Why had they gone silent? What were they planning? Were they preparing for something much larger? Velquar, the alien diplomat, was in a meeting with the leaders of the Kaldreth Confederation, a peaceful alliance of alien races. They had always relied on human expertise to settle their conflicts, but now the silence was growing. Even the Kaldreth, who had been close allies to humanity, were struggling to make sense of it. "We've waited long enough," one of the Kaldreth leaders, Sivorn, spoke gravely, his voice low. "Humanity has made its move, and we are no closer to understanding why they chose this silence." The conference room was filled with murmurs of agreement. The Kaldreth had always prided themselves on diplomacy, but humanity's absence left them feeling exposed. Something about this situation felt off, as if the very fabric of the galaxy was fraying at the edges. "We need to reach out," Velquar said. "Humanity's power is not to be taken lightly, but they are not responding to anything we send. Messages, signals, everything falls into the void." A chill swept through the room. No one had ever seen anything like it. Humanity had always been so present. But now, Earth had become a black hole of silence, as if the entire planet had turned inward. Back on Earth, the silence was absolute. Inside a secret underground facility, a group of human leaders gathered in a darkened room. They had been watching the events unfold across the galaxy. The Valzov's defeat was only the beginning. There was so much more at stake. But they weren't just watching from a distance. They had been preparing for something far larger than any of the galaxy's races could comprehend. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now the leaders of Earth were about to show the universe what it meant to stop caring. Raylan Cole, the commander who had led the defense on Alpha Terra, stood before a large digital map of the galaxy. The map was filled with blinking lights, human colonies, Valzov movements, alien trade routes. But beneath the map, hidden from all the galaxy's eyes, was the true power of humanity's plan. "We can't keep this quiet forever," Raylan said. The galaxy will start asking questions. They'll wonder what we've been planning." His words hung in the air like a storm, but the others remained calm. They had been waiting for this moment for years. "We don't need to explain ourselves," another leader, Lysa Martell, responded. Her voice was firm and unwavering. "The galaxy has had its time to rule. Now, humanity will take control, not with fleets, but with ideas. We are going to change everything." The humans were no longer thinking in terms of military might. They were thinking of influence, the kind of influence that could reshape the galaxy's very foundation. What had once been a place of constant conflict and competition could now be a new order, one in which humanity was the silent architect. But that would require something even more powerful than ships or weapons. It would require the galaxy to believe. In the meantime, Velquar and the Kaldrith leaders were not giving up. They had to understand what humanity was planning, but their methods were beginning to fail. After months of waiting, they decided to take a more direct approach, one that was both dangerous and necessary. They organized a small envoy to Earth, a peace mission of sorts. The galaxy's top diplomats, including Velquar himself, would travel to Earth and attempt to make contact. They had hoped that humanity's silence would end, that they would be willing to explain their new position. But the galaxy's representatives had no idea what awaited them. As the ship carrying the envoy reached Earth's orbit, they expected to receive a warm greeting. But all they received was an encrypted transmission. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet distant. "We've been waiting for you," the voice said, its tone calm and unyielding. "But you will not be allowed to land. Not yet." The transmission went silent for a moment, and then another message flashed across the screen. It was brief, but its meaning was clear. "The time of diplomacy is over." The transmission cut out. On Earth, Raylan Cole stood before a massive holographic screen that showed the approaching alien ships. They were preparing to land, to demand answers. But humanity wasn't ready to answer in the way they expected. It was time. "Activate the protocol," Raylan ordered. In an instant, hidden satellites and devices across the solar system came to life. Humanity's quiet strategy had always been more than just silence. It was about waiting. Waiting for the moment when the galaxy would be at its most vulnerable. And now, that moment had arrived. Across the galaxy, systems blinked to life. Signals, encrypted and scattered, began to reach alien races. The transmission wasn't a plea or a threat. It was a promise. Humanity's silence had not been a sign of weakness. It had been the signal to the galaxy that everything had changed. The Kaldrith and Velquar's ship, still in orbit around Earth, received another transmission. This one was different. "We are the architects now. Your universe has been built on a lie. We will tear it down, one world at a time." The message was clear, and the galaxy could no longer deny it. Humanity had not been weak. Humanity had simply been waiting. The galaxy was trembling. A shift had occurred, subtle but powerful. The silent reign of humanity was no longer just a mystery. It was a force. One by one, systems across the galaxy were starting to feel the weight of Earth's influence, without ever seeing a single Terran warship. No, this was something much more profound. Humanity was changing the rules, reshaping the galaxy without anyone knowing how or why. Velquar paced in his command center aboard his flagship, his thoughts scattered. He had seen the signs, but he couldn't quite make sense of them. One moment, humanity had vanished into silence. The next, they were moving the pieces of the galaxy like pawns on a chessboard, without ever touching the pieces. The encrypted transmissions that had appeared across the galaxy were not mere warnings. They were a call to action, but not one that demanded force. No, it demanded belief. And those who refused to see humanity's power were finding themselves caught in a web they couldn't escape. On the planet Kraloth, once an isolated colony of the Zephyran Empire, an unexpected development had occurred. The Zephyrans, a race known for their strength and pride, had long claimed the Kraloth system as part of their vast empire. The Zypherans didn't bow to anyone, and they had long ignored the growing rumblings of humanity's quiet influence. But that changed with a single broadcast. It wasn't a weapon or a military fleet that arrived, but rather a simple message. A message that felt like a whisper, but carried the weight of a galactic storm. A broadcast filled the Zypheron capital screens, not demanding anything, but offering a truth. Kraloth's future is no longer in your hands. You were always meant to be part of something bigger. Your empire has failed you. Join us, and we'll show you what the universe can truly become. The Zypheron leaders were furious. How dare anyone speak to them this way? And yet there was something about the message, a feeling in their bones, a quiet nagging doubt that they couldn't shake. Their empire had always been strong, but they had seen cracks. Humanity had touched those cracks. No force, no weapon, just words, and now they were uncertain. Far from Kraloth, on the desolate moon of Galion, the Voxay Coalition, an alliance of highly intellectual and philosophical races, gathered to discuss the recent turn of events. They had always viewed humanity with suspicion. After all, they were a young species compared to the centuries-old Voxay, and their rise had been rapid, unpredictable. But now, even the Voxay could not ignore the growing power of Earth. Despite humanity's quiet, almost invisible presence, they had somehow influenced half the galaxy without lifting a finger. And it was the message from Earth, the one that had haunted the galaxy, that had rattled them. "What are they planning?" asked Thokal, the Voxay leader, his voice sharp. "How is it possible for humanity to control entire systems with nothing but a whisper? I do not trust this." His advisor, Slareth, spoke carefully. "We've always underestimated them, Thokal. Perhaps it's time we stopped. We have seen their power, through words, through subtle influence. It is not the force of armies they wield, but the force of belief. They have made others believe in their vision of a new order. But this is wrong," Thokal insisted. "They can't just reshape everything with their ideas. They are not gods." Slareth's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, Thokal, they do not need to be gods. Perhaps they only need to make others think they are." Back on Earth, humanity's leaders were working tirelessly, not through war, but through influence. Raylan Cole, who had once led the defense on Alpha Terra, now stood before a massive digital map that stretched across the entire wall. It was time to enact the next phase. Lisa Martell, the same leader who had once spoken of changing the galaxy's foundation, stepped into the room, her expression unreadable. She watched Raylan in silence for a moment before speaking. "We've established control over several systems," Lisa said quietly. "Kraloth has begun to fall in line. As we anticipated, the Zypherans may be proud, but they are not blind. They see the cracks in their empire." Raylan nodded, his fingers tracing over the digital map. "It's not just Kraloth. We've ceded influence in the Voxay Coalition. Once they start questioning their own foundations, the rest of the galaxy will follow." "You're certain this will work?" Lisa asked, concern flashing in her eyes. "The galaxy may be scared, but fear can only last so long." Raylan's eyes met hers, cold and calculating. "Fear isn't the tool we need. Belief is. Once the galaxy believes that we are the new order, they will have no choice but to accept it." On the edge of the galaxy, the Tsenra Confederacy, a race of deadly, ancient warriors, had begun to feel the effects of humanity's quiet influence. Known for their brutal conquests and ruthless diplomacy, the Tsenra were a force to be reckoned with. But even they were not immune to the subtle waves of change. Xenra General Kareksor, a fierce warrior who had crushed thousands of enemies, stared at the message transmitted from Earth. "This is madness," Karak growled, his voice echoing through the war room. "No one can take control of the galaxy without force. Humanity is just a fleeting problem. They'll fall like the rest." But his advisors looked uneasy. "Perhaps, General, they are something more. There is a strange power in their silence. We've seen it spread across the galaxy. They have made others believe." Carrick slammed his fist onto the table. I will not bow to their words. We will see this belief broken with blood. I will lead our forces and crush them before they can do more damage. But even as Carrick spoke with such confidence, there was a growing sense of uncertainty in the room. The Exenra had been conquerors for millennia, yet they had never faced anything like humanity's quiet but growing control. Humanity had not needed armies. They had not needed force or weapons. What they had wielded was far more powerful: influence, belief, and the quiet shaping of minds. And with every message, every whisper sent through the galaxy, the silent reign of Earth spread further, creating ripples of control that would soon be impossible to undo. The universe was beginning to change. The galaxy was on the brink of something enormous. From the farthest reaches of the universe, the whispers of humanity's quiet revolution were growing louder, and the beings who had once ruled the stars began to feel the pressure. On the edge of the Milleran sector, a once thriving trading hub now reduced to political instability, the leaders of the Tracker Dominion gathered in their private chambers. The Tracker, known for their aggressive expansionism, had always ruled through fear and strength. They had watched the rise of humanity with caution, dismissing them as an upstart species with no real place in the galactic order. But that was before the whispers, before the subtle shift that had begun to undermine everything the Tracker stood for. One by one, their strongest military commanders, who once commanded the fiercest fleets in the galaxy, were disappearing, not through force, but through something else. Something subtle. The influence of humanity was like an invisible current, gently pulling at the fabric of their empire. Tracker Prime Minister Orak Thun stood before the central holoscreen, showing an unsettling image, a transmission from Earth. The Tracker Dominion's strength lies in its fear, but fear alone will not keep you in control. Come, join us. We offer you more than dominance. We offer you a future. The message was simple, but it struck a deep chord in Orak. The Tracker had always been mighty, but had their empire truly ever been more than just fear? Were they truly rulers, or merely tyrants in disguise? The Prime Minister's advisors were in a state of disarray. Some suggested retaliating with force, but the quiet influence of humanity was already too pervasive. They are recruiting our own people. One of the generals spoke through clenched teeth, his voice laced with frustration. How can we fight a force that we can't even see? Orak's mind raced. We have always believed that control came from force, he murmured. But they are showing us otherwise. If they can control our thoughts, our beliefs, what happens to the Tracker Dominion then? On Zinhar, a planet once ruled by the brutal Drexian warlords, a similar fate was unfolding. Zinhar had long been a symbol of unstoppable strength and ruthless conquest. The Drexians had dominated the sector for centuries, crushing all who dared to oppose them. But as they watched Earth's rise, they began to realize something troubling. Humanity's power was not in its physical strength. It was in its ability to sway, to make the galaxy believe that they could be something more than conquerors. Warlord Xylan, leader of the Drexian forces, slammed his fist against a stone pillar in his war room. His men, battle-hardened veterans, looked on in silence. They are not fighting us with armies, but with ideas. Xylan growled, pacing like a caged beast. They have managed to turn our own people against us with nothing but words. A Drexian officer stepped forward, his voice low. It's not just words, Warlord. It's a promise, a future that makes our strength seem hollow. Xylan paused, his sharp eyes narrowing. He had spent his entire life conquering worlds, yet now he was faced with an enemy that didn't need to fire a single shot. We need to stop this mind game, Xylan muttered. No one has ever defeated the Drexians without force. Humanity's silence is what gives them power. Back on Earth, the leaders of humanity were not worried. They were not just waiting for the galaxy to fall into line. They were making it fall into line, carefully and strategically. Raylan Cole stood before the Council of Earth, a collection of leaders from across the Terran colonies. Their influence was growing, and it was beginning to shape everything around them. The Kaldreth Confederation, the Voxay Coalition, the Tracker Dominion, and the Zytheron Empire were already feeling the weight of Earth's power. "We have turned the galaxy into a game," Raylan said, his voice calm, almost soothing. "And the pieces are moving exactly as we planned." Lysa Martell stepped forward, her eyes sharp as she looked out over the gathered leaders. "The Tracker have already begun to question their own strength. The Zytherans are starting to doubt the foundation of their empire. And the Drexians, well, the Drexians are angry. But even anger can be redirected." "We don't need to fight them, Lysa," Raylan replied. "We need to make them believe that they want to join us. Once they see that our vision is the future, they will have no choice but to come under our influence. That's how we win." Meanwhile, far out in the galaxy, an unprecedented event was taking place. The Valzoth, who had once been humanity's greatest enemy, had begun to rethink their place in the universe. Led by Jargoth, the Valzoth commander who had once vowed to annihilate humanity, the Valzoth High Command was now debating their next course of action. Should they wage war once again, or was there another, more powerful way to defeat this growing influence? Jargoth paced before his council, staring out at the stars through the observation window. "Humanity is different," he muttered to himself. "We have fought countless species, crushed them beneath our boots. But this is something we can't crush." One of his commanders, Heskar, spoke cautiously. "Their power isn't in war. It's in what they make others believe. We cannot fight what we cannot see. We cannot destroy what is hidden in the minds of their allies." Jargoth clenched his fists. "Then we must break that belief. We must make the galaxy see that humanity is nothing more than a fleeting shadow, a species that depends on nothing but whispers." But humanity was already 2 steps ahead. Raylan Cole, once a military commander, had now become a master strategist. He was shaping the galaxy from the shadows, using the subtle, quiet power of ideas. And with every passing day, more and more species, more and more systems were beginning to fall in line with humanity's vision. They had turned the galaxy's power structures upside down without firing a single shot. And as the universe stood on the brink of transformation, the galaxy could no longer deny what was happening. Humanity's silent revolution was unstoppable. The galaxy was in turmoil. What had started as whispers and subtle shifts had now become a full-scale crisis. The great powers that once ruled the stars, secure in their dominance, were beginning to see cracks in their foundations. What they thought was an unshakable hold on the galaxy was unraveling, not from the edge of a blade, but from the creeping influence of humanity's quiet revolution. On the icy moon of Valor, in the heart of the Valkyrian Dominion, a crisis was brewing. The Valkyrians, a species known for their technological superiority and ruthless military campaigns, had prided themselves on their perfect order and discipline. For centuries, they had ruled over multiple star systems, their fleet feared across the galaxy. But something had changed. Valor's council hall, once a place of absolute authority, was now a site of unease. Chancellor Varric, the leader of the Valkyrian Dominion, paced before a large holographic display showing the recent transmissions from Earth. They were unsettling. Too calm, too persuasive. Each message was a gentle push, a subtle reminder that the galaxy was changing, and the Valkyrians were no longer in control. The most recent transmission had shown the Terran flag, a symbol that had once meant little to the galaxy, being flown over a vast star system. The message that followed was simple. The future of the galaxy cannot be shaped by force alone. Come, join us, and together we can forge a future based on unity and strength through belief. The words echoed in Varric's mind. Unity through belief, Varric repeated aloud, his voice tinged with disbelief. What kind of power is this? A Valkyrian general, Tarnak, stepped forward, his expression tight. It is power we cannot see, Chancellor. Power we cannot fight with ships or guns. How do we oppose an enemy that doesn't even have a military to fight? The question hung in the air, unanswered, The Valkyrians were a people who believed in strength, in the power of the battlefield, but humanity's power wasn't in weapons, it was in ideas, and those ideas were spreading like wildfire, slipping past the Valkyrians' defenses and seeping into their society. "We cannot afford to wait," Varric said, his voice hardening. "If we do not act now, the Valkyrian dominion will cease to exist. We need to put an end to this quiet war before it destroys us from within." Far from Valar, on the lush and vibrant planet of Pilaris, the Astrax Coalition, a vast alliance of peaceful species, was facing its own dilemma. For centuries, they had maintained their neutrality, offering diplomatic solutions to disputes and keeping their distance from the chaos of galactic power struggles. But even the Astrax could no longer ignore the pull of humanity's influence. Pilaris' Grand Council Chamber, once a symbol of hope for peace, had become a place of heated debate. Councillor Zyril, the lead diplomat of the Astrax, sat at the center of the gathering, his face grave. "The human message is too compelling," Zyril murmured. "We have spent our lives promoting peace, but these humans, they are not just offering peace. They are offering something far more dangerous: unity." One of his colleagues, Lyra, a member of the Valerian Alliance, frowned. "Unity sounds like peace, but what do we risk by joining them? They are not the saviors they claim to be." Zyril nodded slowly. "They are not offering peace. They are offering control. They are offering a future where belief in their vision becomes the most powerful force in the galaxy." A murmur spread through the chamber. The Astrax had always prided themselves on their ability to maintain neutrality. But now, the question was no longer about avoiding conflict. It was about whether to align with a growing force that had already begun to reshape the galaxy, whether they liked it or not. On the distant planet Foran, Empress Quira of the Ithran Empire sat in her ornate throne room, staring down at the holographic display of the latest galactic events. She had long been a ruler who relied on diplomacy and cunning, using her vast networks of spies and allies to maintain control. But even her vast intelligence network could not prevent the tidal wave that was coming. In recent weeks, the Ithran Empire had seen its internal dissent grow, as factions within her own court had started to question her leadership. And it wasn't because of her decisions, it was because of humanity's unseen influence. Across the Ithran court, emissaries from Earth had begun to spread messages, offering the possibility of a new order. The latest broadcast had included a simple statement: "The Ithran Empire is strong, but even the mightiest empire can crumble from within. We offer you a chance to build a future where unity is forged through belief. The galaxy cannot survive on strength alone." Quira clenched her fists in frustration. She had built her empire through strength and intelligence, not through empty promises. Yet now, even her most loyal subjects were starting to question her authority. "I will not be brought down by these foreign ideas," Quira growled, her eyes darkening. "The Ithran Empire will not bow to Earth." But even as she spoke the words, a deep doubt lingered in her mind. What if she was wrong? What if humanity's vision was the future the galaxy needed? Back on Earth, humanity's leaders were closer than ever to their goal. Raylan Cole, now seen as the guiding force behind the galaxy's silent transformation, stood at the heart of Earth's capital, surrounded by those who had come to see his vision as their own. "We are on the cusp of something greater than any military victory," Raylan said, his voice calm and confident. "Humanity has shown the galaxy that the greatest power does not lie in war. It lies in the ability to shape belief, to make others see the truth that we have always known. The future of this galaxy is ours, and we will lead it through unity." Lisa Martell, his closest ally, nodded. "The message is simple, but powerful. We offer them a future. The galaxy cannot continue as it has. It is time for change." "We must be patient," Raylan added. "The pieces are falling into place. Every day, more species realize the truth. Humanity is the future, not because of our strength, but because we are creating belief. And once the galaxy believes in us, they will have no choice but to follow." As the galaxy spiraled deeper into uncertainty, one thing became clear. The old powers, the ancient empires and mighty fleets, were no longer the uncontested rulers of the stars. Humanity had begun a quiet revolution, and its influence was felt everywhere, spreading like a shadow that could not be seen but could not be escaped. The foundation of the galaxy was crumbling, and in its place, a new order was rising, one built not on fear or force, but on something far more powerful: belief. The galaxy had entered a turning point. The once immense powers that controlled the stars, built on a foundation of strength and fear, were crumbling. What had started as a quiet revolution was now impossible to ignore. Humanity had spread its message far and wide, not through force, but through something far subtler: belief. The galaxy was no longer in the hands of tyrants, warlords, or diplomats. It was shifting toward a new order, and at the heart of it all stood the silent, persistent force that was humanity. On Zoreth, a desolate planet at the edge of the Valerian Reach, the remnants of the old galactic power were gathering. The Valerian warlords, once masters of the galaxy's most feared fleets, had called for one final summit. Their leaders, bloodied from countless wars, had seen their empires torn apart by the same unseen influence that had infiltrated every corner of the galaxy. Zeroth, the last of the Valerian warlords, stood before a massive table surrounded by his closest allies. Their faces were grim, their eyes filled with a mix of fear and anger. "It is happening," Zeroth said, his voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might somehow make it more real. "Humanity is taking over, and we are powerless to stop it." A younger commander, Vekla, clenched her fists in frustration. "But we still have fleets, we still have power. We can fight them, defeat them with our strength. Why do we just sit here and let them spread their lies?" Zeroth's gaze hardened. "It's not their strength we have to fear, Vekla. It's their ideas. We've been fighting wars for centuries, thinking strength was all that mattered. But humanity is proving that belief is stronger than anything we've ever built. Their strength is in the mind." Another warlord, Kor, spoke with a sense of cold finality. "What are we to do then?" "Surrender." Zeroth stood tall, his voice commanding. "No, we must face them on their own ground. We must join them." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The Valerians had always been the ones to conquer and destroy, but now they were being asked to join the very force that had unseated them. Humanity had turned their greatest weapon, the power of belief, into an unstoppable force, and now it was offering them a way forward. Meanwhile, on Kylora, the homeworld of the Selvans, a peaceful species of incredible intellect and culture, the situation was no better. The Selvans had prided themselves on their wisdom, living in harmony with the universe, and never engaging in war. However, as humanity's influence spread, even the Selvan scholars began to question their place in the galaxy. Senator Malira, a leading voice in the Selvan Council, paced back and forth in the Grand Hall. "How is this possible?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Humanity, a species that has existed for such a short time, is spreading its influence everywhere, and they are doing it without war, without conquest." Her colleague, Kelnar, a fellow scholar, nodded grimly. "Their strategy is brilliant. They've changed the very fabric of the galaxy, and they did it through their ideas, through unity, through belief." "I don't understand," Malira admitted. "We have built an empire of wisdom, yet now we find ourselves on the edge of being swept away by the force of humanity's message." The room was filled with a sense of dread. The Selvans had always believed their way was the correct way, their peaceful philosophy, their pursuit of knowledge. But humanity had shown that knowledge alone was not enough. Humanity was proving that the heart and mind were more powerful than all the wisdom in the galaxy. In the Kaldrak sector, the Zephyron combine, a species that had once ruled through fear, intimidation, and military might, was beginning to fracture. Their capital planet, Zephyron Prime, had been the seat of the most powerful war fleet in the galaxy. Yet now, Their citizens were questioning the very foundations of their empire. Grand Commander Thrax, the leader of the Zifran military, had long been known for his ruthless conquests. He was a symbol of power, someone who inspired fear across the stars. But now, as he sat before his war council, there was something different in the air. "We've fought wars for millennia," Thrax muttered, his voice heavy. "But nothing we've ever done has prepared us for this. Humanity has turned our own weapons against us." A Zifran general, Corin, spoke up, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How are they doing this? How are they defeating us with nothing but their ideas?" Thrax clenched his fists. "The greatest weapons we have are our fleets. But ideas, humanity has weaponized ideas. They have convinced the galaxy that they are the future. And we are the past." The Zifran warlords had always relied on their superiority, their might. But now, they were facing an enemy that didn't need weapons, didn't need fleets. Humanity had already won without a single battle, using belief as their weapon. Back on Earth, the Council of Humanity gathered, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic displays around them. Raylan Cole, now recognized as the galaxy's most influential figure, stood before them, calm and collected. His vision, his quiet revolution, had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. "It is done," Raylan said, his voice carrying a quiet confidence. "The galaxy is ours." Lisa Martell, his closest ally, stepped forward. "We've reshaped the galaxy in our image, not through force, but through something far more powerful: belief. The empires that once ruled through terror and war are now our allies, or they are crushed beneath the weight of their own doubt." Raylan smiled. "We don't conquer with armies. We conquer with ideas. We've given the galaxy something it desperately needed: a new way forward." The holograms flickered as the leaders of the former empires began to appear, each one acknowledging the change that had occurred. The Valerians, the Xelvans, the Zifrans, and even the Valkyrians, all had recognized the truth. Humanity had become the new center of power in the galaxy, not because of brute strength, but because they had shown the galaxy a better way. As the galaxy moved into a new era, one ruled not by fear, but by shared belief, the stars themselves seemed to shift. The power structures had changed, and with it, the future of the universe. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the greatest strength wasn't in armies or fleets. It was in the ability to shape the very thoughts of those around you. And as the dawn of a new era rose, one thing was certain: the galaxy was now united, and humanity was at its heart.